Davos, Switzerland, up here in the snowy and beautiful Alps, and this wonderful OT convention, 1989, hosted by the Walchwil, Zurich, Bern, and all the different delivery places in Switzerland. This is admin briefing number 4, and it is called Omitted Bridges. Now, you've all probably read or heard admin briefing 1, 2, and 3 about the bridge, false bridges, and your bridge. But recently, I have come across something very interesting. And it fits in with the convention and the subjects mentioned in the convention lectures. And it has an overall look at some things that are omitted in this game, omitted in this universe, and have been omitted, never were put in. I have the proof of that. Leaning on it right here. That these areas were never handled and never had a bridge. All right? Now, what I mean when I say omitted bridge is I mean it is a bridge different, a bit different from the one you're on, or the one you're doing, or the one you were trained to use. But it nevertheless is there and is necessary to end off the game properly, or at least bring it into a better game, a more viable game. So what am I referring to here is a bridge concerning the 5th and the 6th dynamic. Now, when I say omitted bridges, I mean that each of those 2 dynamics may be composed of certain things which need a different bridge, so there may be more than one. Now, we have only been able to get to this point by actually completing the bridge for the theta and the game player. You, who are playing a game, whether you know it or not, on at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 dynamics, and if you're on a mission, maybe even more. But you're playing a game on various dynamics. You all know about that. You studied it from the first moment that you heard your first public efficiency lecture, the 8 dynamics, and then aesthetics, ethics, tech, admin. Yes, we have these dynamics, and your processing is devoted toward expanding your abilities on these dynamics and increasing your awareness of these various dynamics and the games that are played on. But that's your bridge. What about the created particles, created bits of postulated theta and matter, energy, space, and time that exist on these dynamics? Is their bridge the same as yours? No. But they have to end off the game too, or it isn't a complete cycle. You can't play a new game with well, you can, but it won't be very much fun and probably not as good, and it will be less viable than the one you were in if you don't finish as is, bring to conclusion, complete the cycle on the old game. Otherwise, it drags over into the new game. All right? Just like the bill you didn't pay last month. It still keeps bugging you this month. You see? Or the papers you didn't file properly last year, you can't find them this year. Or any incomplete cycle in your life, if you look at it, why can you look at it? You can look at it because it isn't complete. It's still there, reaching for your attention. If you had really completed it, then I would say look at the completed cycles and you would just have a feeling of win. Yeah, I did that. It's finished. You see? But the incomplete cycle of action will hold your attention. Now, let's get back to the fifth and sixth dynamic. Fifth dynamic, life forms. Sixth dynamic, matter, energy, space, and time. So what is the bridge for this? And what is the bridge for this? Now the fifth dynamic is a combination itself of seventh dynamic theta and sixth dynamic matter, energy, space, and time. So there may be a combination of two bridges there, or maybe three that it has to have. Okay? You see the point here. Have you ever gone to any therapy, school of knowledge, anywhere like that, where they said, well, this is the way we are going to bring this piece of matter, energy, space, and time out of this game and finish it off for it? No. People are too concerned with their own cases on all their dynamics, usually to even bother about it, except in one specific, and that is their own body and whatever it keeps bumping into physical universe. And there you have produced a thing called incident, or ingram, or secondary, or different things that happen with the various randomities of collision with mest by other mest and life forms. Of course, it can also be fun to some degree, but all games should be fun. If they're viable, they should be fun as well. So what is it? What has happened to this matter, energy, space, and time? What has happened to the theta particles of the body? What has happened to these tiny little, we can call them individuals, or little pieces of theta? Because if you go back to axiom 1 and 2, you will find that matter, energy, space, and time itself was created and or agreed upon by the static, or the thetans, the players of the game. So, we come right down to it. You've got little particles of created theta there, or that theta created, whichever way you like it. Now, what is the bridge for these guys? Now, remember, they are not playing the game on all dynamics like you are. In fact, they are only on one dynamic, one of your dynamics. So it's quite obvious from a technical point of view that they may have an entirely different bridge. All right? Now we are in a position to actually develop the processes for these bridges. We cleaned off all the other junk, all the implants, all the incidents, ingrams, lots, secondaries, all the things that were affecting your game as well as theirs. And now, you get it all cleaned up and you say, hey, I'm willing to have a better game now, and what are all these people stuck in? Let's get them out of it. Well, that's the players, but what about the postulated particles? Well, we we know on the bridge that if we get each person in the game up the bridge, he will then take responsibility for and complete the cycle on every particle he created. We know that. That happens in OT 12 and 13. But there's so many players. It will take a while. And meanwhile, you have to operate with this stuff. And so for a purely selfish, if you want to put it that way, reason, you want to operate better. If you can bring some of the mess and some of the lambda, which is the life form part, the mess is the phi part, Greek letter phi, from the Dianetic axioms. If you want to operate better, you can help bring it up the bridge, at least in your immediate environment. Now, does that sound interesting to help your OT operation? Because you all know, yes, I can get it done, but it takes so long. It's longer than my usual earlier universe game postulates. If I wanted a hamburger in those days, I just said hamburger, and there it was. Well, that was your created hamburger. Maybe on a VA, if you wanted to have it stay around to eat it, you would create it on a VA, you see, so it would disappear the minute you looked at it and said, yo. So, but definitely it was yours. Or maybe one or two of your friends, and you all knew whose particles were whose. But in a big complicated game like this, with 8 dynamics, myriads, billions of players, you have to operate within a framework of, we have to get these guys on the bridge, one or two at a time, and we're moving it along, and we're moving it along, and we run into the scenarios, and so on and so on. And the implants are working hard to make sure that they can recognize you and all that, as Arnold was talking about. So we handle it on an all-dynamic basis. But let's also look at the possibility of shortening down some of these long postulate to completion cycles by actually auditing some of the matter, energy, space, time, and life forms that are in the cycle of action. If we can audit them successfully, we can get the compliance of the cycle of action done much faster. And we might get some very, shall we say, unusual phenomena coming out of that. Now, this is just the theoretical and logical background to this from the theory of games and from the theory of the bridge, the technology of LRH and Scientology. You've all looked at it before, I'm sure, in some way or another. But now let's look at it from a CSing viewpoint, case supervision viewpoint. Let's look at some of these differences. And I think you'll be amazed at some of the simplicities we have overlooked. I know I felt very stupid when I found them. Not stupid now, but stupid then. And realized that I had missed and probably misinterpreted or didn't quite get the full meaning of what LRH was saying, or had missed something about it. And now I realize, man, this is so simple. Why didn't we ever see this before? Okay? Now here's one of the examples. You're playing a game on 8 dynamics, or at least maybe 12, maybe more. But a particle that is created with a purpose. You don't create things for no purpose at all. You don't spend your money on things you don't need. You don't plan your day so that you do things you don't want to do, you don't need to do. So you have some event a purpose is not the same as operating on 8 or 12 dynamics. It's a single thing. Maybe worded a bit complexly or intended a bit complexly, but it's not the same thing. I mean, this little piece of mess here doesn't go and get married to that little piece of mess. And they don't have children. You see what I mean? So they're not operating with that like that. And this little piece of mess here is not going around saying how many little sub-locos or sub-atoms or sub-particles he owns. You see what I'm saying? He's not having his first dynamic possessions and his second dynamic and things like that. No, this is not the same bridge. It's not the same bridge at all. So when I realized that, hey, wait, these guys are on dynamics. They're not playing all the dynamics. They're not playing a game on all the dynamics. They are on the dynamic. They only have a purpose there. The trick is to find out what is the purpose. And the trick is to then be able to do a CS to audit that purpose and to straighten it out, handle any losses on it. It's not the failed purpose rundown, by the way. Because it hasn't failed. It is doing it. One thing about these postulates, they're very strong, and those little particles will keep doing that forever. They will. And they might have their troubles with it, and they might have some ARC breaks and so on, but they'll keep doing it forever. Until the creator of that particle goes and does the bridge and goes to OD 12 and 13. But while he's doing that, he might as well do it happily, and he might as well do it viably, and he might as well help the people who are trying to clean up the game and finish it off properly and bring it to a new game. You understand what I mean? There is a help factor here. Now, it's okay, if you agree to help and restore nice and clean the purpose of the lambda and phi, then you are qualified to audit and CS the lambda and phi. Never audit somebody, you know what the hell. So if you're going around being angry at mess and you don't like your body, well, don't become an auditor for it. Turn yourself over to a review auditor. Don't audit counterintention. You don't want to help it, but if it needs help, don't play around with it. But if you really want to help the fifth and sixth dynamic, and you like that idea of increasing the operation potential, shortening down the operation time, then this can be done. Now, one of the first things I realized when I realized that there is a purpose sitting in every created particle, put there by its creator. Maybe some of them are similar, some of them are the same. A lot of them have to do with the game, of course. And they could have had all the things happen to those purposes that you could have happened to any one of your dynamics. But they're still there. And that is their basic. Or at least their basic of existence. If you want to go earlier than that, then you have to get them back to the individuality of their creator. In other words, he has to come to do it on OT 12 or 13 and get recognition there, back and forth, that, yes, I did it. It's okay. You finish the game. It's okay to return to that moment of creation and become as is. But this is also a possibility at upper OT levels to do a lot of this, but let's just look at it from the viewpoint of a gradient. How can we help a particle of mass or a particle of lambda, life form? How can we help it achieve its purpose? And we have to realize that since thetans are basically good, they would have good purposes in there. Basically, the purposes are good. And they probably, every time a MoCo, a little created particle, and a bullet kills a thetan's body, for instance, in battle, it probably has a slight bit of bypass charge there, a bit of anguish, grief, perhaps air-sea break with the guy who fired the gun. The bullet itself has all that. You see what I mean? Because it's not helping the rest of the game very well. Well, you'd be surprised to find out that there is such charge on matter, energy, space, and time. They're particularly susceptible for the effect of, well, let's say in this order: neglect or non-acknowledgement by the players of the game. Of course, they were created to help in the game. If you don't acknowledge them and you neglect them, they will be displeased with that because it goes against their purpose. Betrayal, especially betrayal. Saying you're going to do something for them and then don't do it, or totally leaving them depend on their own for long periods of time and not even using them at all, or not putting them on another game and say, okay, that's finished, you'll be free, or whatever, giving them their rights and taken. They're also susceptible to bad tech, as anyone is. All right? And that includes somebody using bad intention on them. You understand? If you probably noticed this when you buy a used car. You just look at some of them and you say, boy, the owner sure didn't like that car. He treated it very bad. I don't want it at all. So the car is giving you that intention. I don't like you players. You mess me up. You see? You know what I mean? And there are these intentions laying there and being duplicated by the nest and reflected back to anybody who cares to examine them. And that's some of the charge too. And another charge they get is overrun. In other words, the game went on too long. You said you would come back and free us, but you didn't. Hey, you left us a hell of a long time there without nothing. We didn't even get used. We didn't get played with. We didn't get any kind of acknowledgement. No ARC at all. Feel very overrun about that, especially if the players are going off and trying to start a new game without even, well, with totally ignoring the matter, energy, space, and time they left behind them. Oh boy, from your side it may look like irresponsibility. From their side, it looks like overrun, betrayal, bad, no tact, no auditing, no acknowledgement. Okay? You get the idea that can be charged there. So we're looking at this case phenomenon. Now what tech can we use to handle it? Well, one of the basic policies of LRH in the green on white, and this especially applies to lambda. I've already applied it to lambda. It works very well because the lambda is the interface between theta and nest, and lambda therefore animates the life form. This is the hidden thing the scientists are trying to find all the time. What orders the cells around? What orders the nerves to do sit or move the hand when you touch the stove and so on? Well, this is your lambda interface. These are just created bits of theta that have some of the same smartness of the theta in certain areas. And they have that smartness that they know if you lay that piece of meat on that hot plate, you don't take it off, you get cooked meat. And if you're going to use that finger for giving fingerprints or writing a book or something, you better move it quick. So at least he has that much. The little lambda guy knows that. He says, hey, get it off there. And all the matter, energy, space, and time. Oh, I see. Get it off there. out when everyone else betrayed them. That's the first idea they have, but the basic idea is not that. The basic idea is to join. And they know that somewhere, even if the guy left the universe, he's maybe in a static state somewhere outside the game. So most of your smaller and lighter particles of mass, after they go through the first socialist attempt to gang together for their own mutual benefit, they try to exteriorize from the game to go back to the beginning. So then you find the radiation, you find sunlight, you find all these particles moving on through the universe, expanding the universe. The scientists find the universe is expanding, so trying to get outside of itself. There's very few pieces of solid stuff in it if you care to look at the dimensions of the physical universe. It's really very small particle lumps and lots of open space. And the space itself hardly ever gets acknowledged. Remember, matter, energy, space, time. How about space? Little created particles of space. They hardly ever get acknowledged. But I'll tell you one thing. If you look and go ask an astronomer, how much space is there in between here and the moon or here and the stars and so on? You go, oh wow, there's lots of space there, lots. I measure it in light years of space. Hey, did you ever realize, here's another simple reason, that statement right there is a proof of the individuality of each player in the game. Why? Because each particle of space does not compress unto itself or into any other space. It all stays separate. No matter if the matter tends to come together. The space around with which that was created all tends to stay individualized. That's why you have such large amounts of space around. A large amount of players. A large amount of space. And it won't compress. We're not talking about air here, we're talking about space. Playing field space. It doesn't compress. It will expand. It'll try and get further and further away from it. But each space particle, say, is neighborly to its other space particle, mainly because they never get acknowledged by anybody else. I mean, we already know this from doing the bridge, that you can look at a piece of matter, energy, space, and time anywhere, and you can just acknowledge it and say, hey, I understand that you've been betrayed, you've been overrun, you unflat or haven't been audited at all in a technical way to finish you on the game. I understand all that. And all of a sudden, wow, you get this incredible flow of, wow, somebody finally understands me, coming from the matter, energy, space, and time. No matter what it is. You have to try it sometime. But remember, the reach of a little created particle is very small. And so you have to put both the comm lines there, sort of like a man with an ear trumpet, you know. You have to put this comm line there to put the attention to it, but you also put the coming back comm line for it to talk on. You see? It's like a telephone. You have to have both lines there, one to hear on and one to give on, telepathically. And you will find that you can hear what it says, what emotion it's feeling, and so on. And you can brighten up mess all around by just indicating the bypass charge of that. Yeah, understand. Overrun, betrayed by your creator. Overrun here and went on too long with this game. And didn't have any tech, or you have bad tech. Yeah, I understand all that. We're here to help you. Oh, that'll really get them excited. Wow, what do you want me to do? Okay. Well, now we have something we can really help with. And that is this lambda and phi processing. Now, the policy I mentioned is OT organizations. That's the one LRH writes about, where he talks about rehabilitating a failed purpose or rehabilitating a purpose will bring new life to an area, an org, or an individual. Now that's very interesting. New life. That fits in with viability. Able to live. New life. So all you have to do is work out a series of processes that will clean up the purpose line, bring the purpose line, the matter, energy, space, time, or lambda particles. So it's all cleaned up, we've all bypassed charge. You understand? And bring it forward into the game where you are, present time, and then either let it continue and help experience its rights and if they go free, or it may even be willing to take a new purpose on and do OT operations with you. And normally will, you see? Or at least do its purpose so well that it is just almost, shall we say, can't be knocked off it. In other words, what I'm saying is if you have, say, an automobile that has been treated with these processes, it's better than turtle wax. In other words, it keeps going and going and going and going and going. It fixes itself. It never breaks down. You hardly ever have to do anything to it. And you do normal maintenance, maybe. And it tells you when something is wrong. Huh? That's interesting. So, for durability of matter, energy, space, and time, there's an advantage. And I have, and other OTs have already witnessed some of these results, especially with operation of the matter, energy, space, and time, and also some very strange other activities where it tends to do what you wanted it to do and not be knocked off its purpose line. For instance, things falling off that might break. And all of a sudden, the lambda and the phi work together to make sure that doesn't happen. And you have not even postulated it. I mean, it's just immediate cooperation from the body, from the mess in the area, and whatever it was that was going to fall and break suddenly does not. It does not. And I've seen some stuff with in that line with the body moving so fast that it's impossible to even see it. And it will stop the thing from falling, or you put it back very quickly. And it's faster than I've ever seen any athlete react to anything. You see? Absolutely almost a blur of light. Now, these things happen, and it happens quite often, actually. These things will happen. And before, we sort of looked at it as, well, the guy's going OT, these things happen, and so on and so on. But what we also have to look at now is that he's getting better cooperation from the Dianetics themselves, who also have recognized that the person, the player, is going up the bridge. You see? And so going OT can be looked at as a two-way flow. He is in better control of his dynamics, but also the dynamics are recognizing him and cooperating with him better. You see what I mean? Now, we're going to push the research and the technical processing here into better ways to improve the lambda and phi cases of the phi and the lambda, the matter, energy, space, and time, and life forms, entirely on their own. And this will bring forth, as I said before, an omitted bridge, or bridges, omitted bridges, that were needed to be there in the past, but were never there, and therefore the game became too old, went on too long, became stale. The interference came in, and everything went downhill. Everybody wanted a new game, but they couldn't take any responsibility for what was left of the old one. So they only wanted to blow, take off. You know, that was covered in false bridges, the tape before class. False bridges, you know, the guy says, look, can I get OT in a weekend, you know, and you get me totally out of the universe. I have no responsibility for it. I just want to get out. Oh yes, we can do that. We can do that. Oh yes, 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 yes. If you take these drugs and the guys go on, and there's another body standing around there for some implanter or Markavia to use. Okay, so we have this, and these processes, I've started to work on some of these and try them out, and they're going to be available for people to CS and audit, and we're going to apply some of them down the bridge for specific body problems. And of course, when you look at it fully, the gradient from Dianetics, of course, helps this in both respects. It gets the thetan more a cause over the dynamics and the accidents and injuries that happened on them, but it also brings the communication level of the body back up. And it also brings up the responsibility of the person for the body and for the body itself to recognize that, hey, this guy's playing the game again. He's talking to us. You see? He's running us through our incidents. Oh, wow. You see? You see what I mean? So it's a two-way operation here. We're going to improve OT-ness not only on you, but also on your dynamics. Now, I don't know where this is going to lead, because in this complex of a game, with this many players in it, we haven't ever done this one before. We haven't needed to. We've had other complex games, but the bridges were quite simple. There wasn't interference. There wasn't so much, shall we say, suppression, betrayals, and so on. In this one, there was a lot. So we might get some quite amazing results. And this will be the exact technical things that we need to handle and give the alternative to the things which are being planned by the other side, which you heard about in John's lectures and in Arnold's lectures and other people's talks and some of my own talks about some of the scenarios planned for this planet on the nest level and on the genetic level for the body. If we move ahead with these processes and this research, we can find and rehabilitate the purpose of the mesh particle. And it won't listen to the implanters. It'll be totally in PT and say, hell with you guys. We're going to finish off the game right. They won't be able to get any compliance from it. See what I mean? If they're down into finding the purpose of the atom and all that. Well, suppose we already have a catalog of all the basic purposes of particles of mesh, the different categories. This we can have. The lambda are going to have various purposes, a little bit more complicated because they run a life form. And they are there to help theta get back in communication and work with mesh. So their purpose may be a little more complicated. I've already worked a series of processes for those. They seem very successful. I need some more people to try them out when they're up the bridge. But the mesh ones, I've just got a corner on that, and I've already found out some very interesting things. That the combination of mesh, we're talking about now basic molecular structure, can be looked at as a combination of the purposes of the atoms and particles comprising it. So let's take a simple example, which I've already examined. Water. Water, if you have read some science and biology, you will know that water molecule is the water molecule H2O, hydrogen, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, is a basic component of the body. It's almost 90% of the body. It's all over your mountains here as snow. It's all over the planet here as water and oceans. And you got it in your house coming in pipes, right? And you have it in your refrigerator as ice. Hey, this is a very active little game guy, huh? Those little guys get around. They're in the air, they're in the ocean, they're in your ice box, they're in your bathtub, they're in your body. Hey, who are these guys? Who are these guys? I call them the water guys, the water mofos, all right? Well, what makes them such great players? They run around, they do all kind of games. You go look at one of the brooks down here as running down the mountain. They're happy. They're having a good time. Of course, you look at them in pollution when they've dropped all kinds of chemicals in the water and all of that. They don't look so happy. Well, they can't carry out their purpose. Because if you analyze these guys, now this goes back, I got the idea of this from an LRH tape in the PDC, where he says that gold, the element gold, the gold molecule, the gold atom, has a purpose in it, have me. Everybody likes gold. I mean, people don't refuse. If you offer them a piece of gold, he goes, yeah, okay. It has a have me. So I thought about that, and I said, well, it's probably pretty simple. They probably have a simple postulate on each particle, and put the combination that makes this thing. And I realized now we're going to have to go through the periodic table, Mendeleev's periodic table, and write all these down as the extra data he didn't put in there for the particles and atoms and so on of the periodic table. But on a water molecule, you have two hydrogens and one oxygen. Now, this didn't get into the subparticles purposes and so on, which I can go into later on the research, but just on the basic hydrogen atom and oxygen atom. And I found a purpose to be free on the hydrogen and to live on the oxygen. So, you can take that. You have two free, and to live on the oxygen. So you can get the combination of to be free, to live freely, or free to live freely, or live freely, and so on. And you look at what water does, and it's doing that. It's very free. I mean, if you don't watch it, things get a little hot. It'll sweat and evaporate right out of you. It's free. And the next thing you know, it may be up in a cloud going over China and say, I'm going to play over here now. The next thing you know, it's in the Yellow River. And the next thing you know, it's in a typhoon. And the next thing you know, it's in northern Alaska, being a piece of ice. And carrying a rock, a giant, enormous rock that human beings couldn't even lift. And it's coming down with it on a glacier, being a piece of ice, and doing it over a period of a few thousand years while it's thinking about what it's going to do next. But it chooses a lot of the time, you see. And it's got that free and live. It lives. It's very active, very viable. And the gold with the have me. You ever notice that people don't go around, well, they do a little bit, but they really have it. They have the gold in the ring, they have it on the finger, they go around the neck, they have it on the neck. Most people have any gold, they put it in the safe, they have it there. You see what I mean? But you don't ever see a game going on where people are throwing pieces of gold back and forth. I mean, it's not a reach and withdraw posture, you know what I mean? It's have. You know, I haven't even seen a game of people throwing it back and forth. And even when you go into a casino, I mean, they make you take chips, not gold. If you want to bet a piece of gold, they go, no, take chips here. Have this. Okay. Okay, so this is the area of research. I just wanted to give you this because it seems to be that this year's convention is moving ahead. We have to move ahead to stay ahead and farther ahead than ever before of the billions and millions and research monies that are being put in on the implanter side. And we have to stay ahead of that. And they have maybe 5 million scientists working on it. And we can stay ahead with 1 or 2 CSs, you know. And $20 for an occasional glass of water. Good water. Clean. But this is why I wanted to bring it to your attention that you will be seeing some stuff coming out, and maybe in your auditing you will be getting some from your CS, maybe to handle some body problem or to get you in better communication with the body. If you're on OT levels, especially source and above, you will be experimenting with some of this stuff yourself. And we do want to catalog these things. We do want to finally handle the 5th and 6th dynamic. It was never handled before. You see it all before you, and you can check it with those commands I gave you, or those indications of bypass charging. You'll find out that it is sitting there because it was never handled before. It's not helping you very much. It's just being there, but you can get it helping you. And the more and better you get it helping you, the quicker we're going to be able to end off this game and make a more viable one. And you can always bring forward into the new game things you like. That's no problem. But just don't leave it unaudited. Don't leave it with incomplete cycles. Don't leave it in a state of aberration. So all of this is possible now. And don't forget the space particles. Because they're holding, you know, space in between everything. It would be very hard to play a game in a big lump. So don't forget the space, guys. And you have to create that every time you do an auditing session, right? Where you say, hey, guys, okay, help me create this space, you know, and make a big auditing session. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Acknowledge them a little bit. And you're going to have a lot more fun in the game. And you're going to get more OT ability sooner. And you're going to be able to complete cycles of action faster. And we're going to be able to do our jobs on this planet a lot easier and with a lot better results. Because we are not only handling our own cases and that of other players, we're also handling the cases of the dynamics themselves. And those, gentlemen, ladies, and all the creative particles around that are listening are the Omitted Bridges. Thank you very much.